Hey everybody, welcome to Obscurities and Miniatures, and it is time once more, because it's Friday, at least when I post this, because I post it like every Friday, if you haven't figured that out yet. Yeah, it's another Obscurity in Literature, and today we're going to take a nice deep dive into some serious obscurities, at least on this side of the world in the English-speaking nerddom, for lack of a better term. And I've mentioned many times on this channel my love and appreciation of trading card game artwork, and especially the stuff that gets made in Japan. There's a lot of really good artists, not to say that there aren't just as many good, talented artists all over the world. It's just, I think, Japan has a prevalence for artists that have that certain kind of style that I really appreciate, I grew up with, and have really enjoyed over the years. I've mentioned the game Duel Masters on many occasions. We've done videos on like Toshiaki Takayama's books. We did a video a long time ago on the actual Duel Masters art book, which is sadly in need of updating because it's like a million years old in terms of card game history. And there's not much else out there, at least officially. And I say officially because books like this exist, but they're kind of a gray area. And I mean, when I say book, this is a good, solid book. And I have two of them today we're going to focus on. But you can see here the sheer size of this. And yes, they're pretty thick pages. But it's a good, solid book, just like our companion book underneath it is. Both of these books here are doujinishi, or self-published comics. Came out at the Japanese comic markets, or komike. And that's basically it. They exist at these events for purchase and publication, and they're not officially sold anywhere else. Sure, there's a bit of that secondary market with places like Surugaya and Mandarake in Japan where you can, get lucky like I did and pick these things up. But outside of that, you're not going to find a whole lot, unfortunately. And what's crazy is I got these for dirt cheap. I want to say I paid about 400 yen for the Nin Nin book, and maybe 400 or 600 for the D-Trench. Now, these are both very well-established artists in the trading card game world in Japan. Nin Nin, in particular, right here, is quite prevalent in the history of Duel Masters, and he's done a ton of stuff for Vanguard as well, the VG standing for Vanguard, DM standing for Duel Masters. Daisuke Izuka as well is a very prevalent artist, and if you have any passing familiarity with Fire Emblem, he's been a major house artist for Nintendo and doing designs for their games for quite some time. And if you want to get really obscure and hardcore, which we will at some point in history on this channel, there's a whole line of self-published doujin books that collect and chronicle all of the artwork from the Fire Emblem card game, which is not available officially even from Nintendo or anything. It's another of these gray area things. So you see, like, there's no real info on the spine. There's no barcodes or anything. No publishers listed. This one's kind of cool because it has different dragons on both sides. But some of this stuff is original, at least in the Trenchwork ones. And here's the kicker, is it says Volume 1. This is from 2015, and to my knowledge, there has been nothing else published. And I love the artwork of, a bunch of animals in kind of Yankee Oendan style, old school uniforms fighting it out. Along with, like, it's got the pompadour and everything. I guess we'll start with the Izuka book here. Now, the thing is, also, all these, you get a little blurb about the artist. 80 pages, not a bad deal for a couple hundred yen. And immediately we're greeted with this piece, which was a set of cards, actually. It was originally a poster, because my kid had it on his wall for years. That was part of the Duel Masters. It was like some special deck, and then like all of the various dragons all over it were their own individual cards as well. And I mean, the man's got a really sharp eye for intricate, well-detailed monster designs. The opposite page here, having a bunch of various Duel Master God cards. These were like 2 or 3 cards that you could actually piece together and then got ridiculous stats. It's just kind of cool having these because this was kind of the era that my kid was playing Duel Masters in. So a lot of this is quite familiar to me. And again, I have a very soft spot for this style of artwork. There is a lot of creativity on display here, and I mean, a lot of these guys kind of set the tone for the future artists that would follow for these various games in a very copycat Me Too style. But when you're a competent artist that can churn out super cool looking dragons like this, then I guess, you know, might as well learn from the best. Again, more of the big dramatic god cards. And then after we get into the Duel Master stuff, we start to move into the Three Kingdoms and Sengoku games that Sega pumped out in Asian game centers all over the world. Sadly, I believe we did see one of these games actually get an English translation, but it lacked the cards. And the cards, I think, are the biggest appeal. And like I said, I'm going to do a video one of these days just on these cards, because Hobby Japan put out a ton, and I mean a ton. We're talking probably close to at least 9 or 10 books, minimum, I think, of just collected artwork from the various Three Kingdoms and Sengoku War games. Basically, they're just like, how do I even describe it? They're card battlers. Like, you had to place the cards on the screen and move them around and stuff. It was kind of a touch screen thing, and obviously you have rarity playing into it and stuff like that. But there's a ton, I mean a ton of these things. And they have them for both the Three Kingdoms and Samurai era Japan. Do these actually look like samurai sometimes? Not so much. Does that really affect it? No. But if you want just neat designs for like figures or 3D models, if you're into that kind of stuff, for making miniatures, there's some really cool ideas, I think, on display. And just, you know, part of it, I think, is also with how the artwork for these games, you know, the characters presented front and center, very clearly depicted usually. It's just, you know, easy to get inspired and clearly see the design. And like I've said many times, if I had any modicum of sculpting talent, and I mean, I'm trying, but it's not like it's going to be looking like this, I would absolutely be pumping this kind of stuff out. I mean, there's just, I love the crazy over-the-top dragon stuff. And this is looking like, yeah, I was going to say, more Vanguard style. Not that there's a huge difference, but again, if you like bulky mechs, dragons, and, you know, intricate armor, I don't think you're going to really go wrong with anything that he's done. Cover piece as well. Quickly looking at the Nin Nin book again. Here's another artist that I've seen tons of because we have tons of cards by him. Similar style, but I mean, as you spend too much time playing these games, like I did when my kids were little, you tend to see certain quirks and traits of artists' unique style starting to come through. Like, Nin Nin tends to do a lot of these kind of spiky designs all over the wings. But again, this book, just nothing. There's nothing but, there's no commentary even for the most part. It's just pictures of monsters. Like, I know for a fact we have some of these cards that he's illustrated. I always like this one. I think we had a foil one of it somewhere. The dragon heads for arms. This was like one of the first psychic cards I think we owned for Duel Masters, and the psychic cards were kind of a big deal because, number one, they had full art across the one side of it because you'd have to flip it over. They were having like a weak side, and then they'd power up into these crazy things. And again, the cool thing is these are pretty big. They're about like 8.5, 9 inches by about 13 inches. No, that sounds way too big. Maybe 11. They're bigger than the typical American comic book. Let me put it that way. Typical than an American trade paperback. I'm going to say again, I know we have some of these cards here. Look, I thought we just saw them. This is looking like we're getting... Nope, still Duel Masters. Now we're getting into the Card Fight Vanguard, Buddy Fight. And lots of sharp, angular mechs. Lots of primary colors. Lots of over-the-top weaponry as well. Some boss monster looking mecha. And like I've said before, this is just kind of the tip of the iceberg with this stuff. And finding more of it is just such a crapshoot of a challenge. I check on like eBay every now and then, and you might find something here and there, but unfortunately, it's like costing an arm and a leg for some of this stuff. Which is a shame, because it's like, more eyes should get to see this, but finding it on this side of the pond is going to be a challenge. Finding it in Japan alone is enough of a challenge. Having to sift through bins and drawers of this stuff, considering what else is often there, is a whole other challenge. Let me tell you, looking for these things, if you ever go dojin hunting in Japan, obviously these are pretty safe for work, but the good vast majority of the stuff that's out there, not so much, unfortunately. Or maybe that's just what sells. But it is kind of neat to see this stuff and not have to pay exorbitant prices. There are some rare cards in here. I'm familiar with it. I've had to go card shopping with my kids before, and back in the day, at least when they were, into this stuff. But, I don't mind paying a couple $100 yen. And even if I bought these things, I want to say like the cover prices were probably close to like, 1,000 yen, 12,000, 1,200, I should say, 2,000. I think is what I was going to say before I mixed up my numbers. But even then, I think that's fairly reasonable for something of this size, of this quality. They're big, they're solid, but again, they're going to be pretty obscure and they're going to be hard to find. I've been trying to find stuff like this on YouTube even, and then I'm kind of coming up short. So if you have any leads on where to track this stuff down that isn't going to result in me having questionable glances from surrounding people if I'm looking at it in public, by all means, point me in the right direction, because unfortunately, like I said, tracking this stuff down isn't the most easy of tasks, but I'm always up for the hunt. So, with that said then, this has been High Lord Tamberlane with Obscurities and Miniatures, saying thanks for watching, and we'll see you back here soon. Bye-bye!